Hello, everyone. So about 90 retired generals and admirals have written a public letter in support of Israel, claiming that Israel is an indispensable ally of the United States. This letter was sponsored by the Jewish Institute for the National Security of America. And leading the signatories of this letter is a guy by the name of Frank McKenzie. He was a former commander of Central Command and also responsible for the Kabul withdrawal. And he happens to work for JINSA as a distinguished fellow. So his name is right at the top of the list. Now, if you take a look at JINSA's website, obviously they talk about many issues, but all these issues are related to Israel. And certainly it's a think tank. It hires retired military and distinguished academics to talk on its behalf and on behalf of Israel, and to lobby for policy and U.S. aid to Israel. And that's fine. But the issue is when you have general officers that openly sign a letter claiming that Israel is an indispensable ally of the United States, there are many issues with this. So let's talk about that. So as you can see in the letter, there's several generals and admirals that have signed this letter. Some of them I know personally and I served with. The problem I have with this is they put their name and their rank on the letter and their previous official position. What they don't tell the viewer is in what capacity are they working in right now. Do they work for a foreign lobby group? If they do, they have to be registered as a foreign agent. Do they work for the military-industrial complex? Who are they getting paid by? So we have no visibility of this. What happens is a lot of these generals get on national TV, on social media, and they make many pronouncements, which the viewer fundamentally believes that this general is giving these viewpoints, and it may be for the right reasons. But the issue is it may also be to promote war and to promote conflict. So so defense corporations can sell their weapons and their equipment, which runs into billions of dollars every year. So there has to be transparency when generals speak. So that's the first part. The second part is when you break down this letter, they claim that Israel is an indispensable ally. Well, the problem I have when generals make this statement is we also have other allies in the region that are very important, such as Saudi Arabia, such as UAE, Qatar, where we have the largest overseas military base in that country. We also have Bahrain, where the Fifth Fleet is based out of. We've also got Kuwait. We've got massive bases and storage facilities for military equipment and gear. So there's other countries. We've got Oman. Again, we've got bases in Oman. So and the United Arab Emirates is another one. So we have other allies in the region, and Israel is one of them. There's no doubt. And I have no problem with these general officers, having a point of view, as anybody is entitled to under the Constitution. But the problem is when you start wearing your rank and promoting yourself, as a retired general, and we don't know who's paying you in the background, there's an issue with that. These generals claim that Israel has a very innovative economy. True, it does. But what they don't tell you is, in the letter, is that Israel has gotten close to $400 billion from the United States, and it happens to be the most subsidized nation in the world. You can be an immigrant from Poland, Ukraine, you come to Israel, and you get incredible amount of tax-free benefits to be able to reestablish yourself in Israel. And most of the Israelis enjoy a higher lifestyle, a higher quality of life than many Americans. We have thousands of veterans that are currently living on the streets. We've got 40 million Americans that are food insecure right now, while we give Israel, $4 billion a year. So they don't mention that. So the Israeli economy is really a subsidized economy. Then they talk about, Israel's incredible technological know-how. They're a leader in technology. The issue really is a lot of that technology is really U.S. or Western technology that Israel takes and re-engineers it and then sells it as their own. A good example is the Iron Dome, which the U.S. essentially paid for. The whole program, was built upon the Patriot missile system that we had. So yeah, so there's a lot of good stuff that comes out of Israel, but we have to keep it in perspective. They take our fighters and stuff, they modify them a little bit, they rename it as their own, and and let people believe that it's an Israeli weapon system. But in reality, it's not. And then finally, these generals talk about Israel's most capable military. Seriously? I mean, think about it. Israel does have a good military, and the reason it does is because the U.S. subsidizes their military. They get all the weapons from us, and it's really a military that's built on a massive, on a large reservist population. And the problem with having conscripts in the military is, yeah, things go fine until the wars or the conflicts get protracted, right? And then you start having discipline issues and whatnot. And we saw that in Lebanon in 1982. We're seeing this in Gaza right now. So Israel, as good as Israel's military is, it's almost 8 months. And Gaza isn't really that big. It's roughly about 25 miles long by 6 to 7 miles wide. And they're fighting a group in Adidas sweatpants and flip-flops with RPGs, with AKs, and homemade rockets. And they're bogged down quite a bit. In other podcasts, I talked about how they should have perhaps handled this differently by moving the population out into camps in the Negev Desert and then gone after Hamas in Gaza. But they didn't do that. So what you had this massive population displacing from the north to the south, from Khan Yunis to Gaza City, from Gaza City down to Rafah, and then Rafah back up to, and that played right into Hamas's hands, and allowing them to have these civilian shields. So when in reality, they should have just moved the population out and then gone after Hamas. So now Israel's got a big problem in its hand, and by doing that and the indiscriminate killing of so many civilians, you've created a huge problem, because now, in my assessment, Hamas can't be defeated, because all the people that Israel has killed, they've also created fighters for generations to come. And this problem has just exploded because it was mishandled, because Israeli military went on a rampage right from the outset, rather than thinking through the problem. So the issue that these generals don't realize that within the U.S. there's an incredible amount of political differences on our support of Israel. By some estimates, 70% of Congress gets massive donations from the Israeli lobby. The American Israel Public Affairs Committee is proudly claiming that 100% of its candidates are being elected. They're donating massive amounts of money. They've set aside $100 million to fund the campaigns of various congressmen and senators. So we need to keep that in the back of our mind. There's obviously protests going across the United States in colleges. So the country's divided on this issue. And what military leaders ought to be doing is standing up and supporting our Constitution. We need to make sure that we're abiding by the laws of war. It's that simple. Today, in the International Court of Justice, there's another case going on against Israel about possible genocide. And, I don't know the outcome of that case, but the bottom line is, where there's smoke, there's fire. And the numbers speak for themselves. When 15,000 children have been killed, 10,000 women have been killed, it's wrong, fundamentally. There's a problem there. And we'll get to the bottom of it. Truth will come out eventually. But in the meantime, Israel to kill innocent civilians. It's got to stop. It's crazy. This is not who we are. This is not what we do. And I don't care what the reason is. October 7th was bad, man. It wasn't good. But the bottom line is, what's happening now is worse. And we're not going to solve the problem of October 7th because it goes back 50-some years of the occupation and the oppression. So the generals need to use their mental aptitude and come up with solutions, a pathway to peace. I'd rather see a letter from our general officers saying, hey, this is the path to peace. rather than just saying, hey, Israel's our indispensable ally and we need to stand by her, through all these atrocities that are being committed. That's wrong. We don't stand by that. We are Americans. We stand by our Constitution. I don't stand by any ideology. We don't. And if there's groups in the United States that are advocating that, they're wrong. And if there's politicians in the United States that are taking money from these groups to stay in power, they're wrong. So we need to do better. And we need to reaffirm our oath to the Constitution and stand by its values. It's really that simple. So everything doesn't need to have a military solution. We need to come up with a peaceful solution. What is the pathway to peace? The pathway to peace is ceasefire, disarm Hamas, come up with a pathway to a two-state solution. But Israel's already said they don't want a two-state solution. Their cabinet's already voted on it. So now we need to take a stand on it. What is the international consensus? The world opinion also matters in this. It's not just Israel's wants and desires. What's the world opinion? What's the United States position? The United States position is a two-state solution. So let's get there. And if there's either side that doesn't want to get there, then we need to cut off funding to them. Rather than, having 94 generals that are being paid off by various lobby groups and the military-industrial complex to promote war, to publish these letters saying that, maintain status quo. Status quo is unacceptable. There is no military solution. There's only one solution, and that's peace. And we're not going to achieve peace through the use of military. I guarantee you that. As we learned in Afghanistan. And these same generals that signed these documents, I served with them in Afghanistan, in Iraq. They were unsuccessful. So what makes us think to listen to them now that their advice is going to be successful in Gaza? It's not. Let's start using our brains and stop promoting war and becoming war merchants, and for our general officers and admirals to advocate, that we should continue to support Israel when their women and children are being killed at the cyclic rate is abhorrent. It's wrong. As an officer, you take an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that means you believe in our constitutional values of freedom, of equality, of human dignity, and justice. And that's what our Constitution is all about. And we can't just go around killing people just because some, Hamas terrorist is hiding behind them with an RPG. Would you use the same tactics if it was in Tel Aviv or if it was in Jerusalem? Or even in a school. A school shooting in the United States. Would you drop a 2,000-pound bomb on a school because there's a shooter inside? Hell no. It's wrong. And that's what we should be talking about. What is the moral equation, the moral dimension of warfare? And there's always a moral dimension of warfare. And if you don't get the moral dimension of warfare right, you're going to lose. That's how we lost Vietnam. We weren't morally on the right side of the equation. That's why we lost in Iraq. We lied. That's why we lost in Afghanistan. We fell behind all these corrupt Afghan officials and warlords, and we ended up losing the moral dimension. And we ended up losing that conflict. So it's important for general officers to realize that. And if you don't realize it, then you don't deserve to be a general. It's really that simple. And what irritates me is, rather than these 90 generals getting on board and signing up for this letter, why didn't they take the time and the mental energy and the experience that they have and talked about a pathway to peace? How do we get there? How do we stop the killing? And the reason they didn't do that is because these guys hide behind their ranks and their previous titles and their positions. So they lead the American public to believe, hey, I'm a general officer, I was former commander of Central Command, and you have to trust me that I'm being patriotic. The reality is you're full of shit. The reality is you're working for the military-industrial complex, or you're being funded by some lobby group with foreign interests. And that's wrong. That's not what officers do. These things are not for sale. Our commission and our oath is sacrilegious. It's not for sale. Because the reason being it's not for sale is you became a general, over the lives, over the sweat, the blood, and the lives of other people, of your troops. And you have to respect that and honor that. And the reason we support and defend the Constitution is because of the American people. And we have to respect them and honor that. We don't all of a sudden just abrogate all that and throw our allegiance behind some foreign nation. That's wrong. We're Americans. And it's incumbent upon our military and our senior officers to remain loyal to the Constitution and loyal to the institutions that they represent. I've been a big advocate in the past. Whenever general officers, retired generals speak in public, they need to put on a sponsor jacket and tell us exactly who's sponsoring you to speak, rather than just saying, I'm General so-and-so, and I was a former commander of Central Command, or former commandant of the Marine Corps. Well, who's paying you now, Slick? That's what we want to know. That's what American people deserve to know, who's paying you now. And it is incumbent upon you to have that full disclosure. And not one of you in that letter that you signed gave disclosure. And I know many of you, and I know who you work for, and I'm not going to take any names in this podcast, but come on, gentlemen, stop chasing money. That's why you're general officers and you get $200,000 plus a year in retirement. You don't need to chase money. It's incumbent upon you to make sure our country and the U.S. military does better. It finds ways to navigate some of these problems that we're facing. And we as a country prosper. Not as individuals, not our net worth, but as a country we prosper. That's what we expect out of our retired generals and admirals. Not all of a sudden sign up on this bandwagon and start publishing letters on behalf of other countries. We should support them, our indispensable ally. Doing that, what you're doing is you're putting our troops at risk. We've got thousands of troops in the Middle East, and there's this rumor control and perceptions that are out there. The United States is a Zionist country. Well, you just reinforced it. Guess what? By putting that out there. And you've put all those, our sons and daughters, at risk. You've endangered their safety in the Middle East by coming out and taking this one-sided letter rather than, coming out with something sensible and saying, hey, we got to find a pathway to peace, and the following are our recommendations. That's what mature, professional people do. So let's stop chasing money and start remembering what we have on our collar and all those young men and women that served us and went before us. That's who we owe it to. That's all I got. Stay rugged. Khan out.